Now let's discuss how we can initialize a table in Ballerina. The syntax for defining a table is simple. Assume that we need to define a table that contains employee details in an organization. So employee details contain employee ID and the name of the employee. So we need to define a table that constrained with a record type that has ID and name as attributes. So type, I will name the record as employee. Then inside the curly brackets, we define the read-only int ID and a string name. We will use this ID field as the key field of the table. A table provides access to its member using the key field that comes from the read-only fields in the constraint. That's the reason for making ID attribute as read-only. Next, we define the table type with this constraint. So type table, then angular brackets. Inside the angular brackets, we provide the constraint for the table. In this case, it is employee record. Then type keyword key, then open and close brackets. Inside the brackets, we provide the key field of the constraint. In this case, it is ID. Then variable name for the table, I will go with employee table, then equal sign. So now we need to add the right hand sign for the expression. For that, type table followed by square brackets. And inside the square brackets, we define the values for our table. In this case, I will add two records. First record contain ID as 1 and name as John. And in the second record, ID as 2 and name as Peter. Remember that the key should be unique in every record value defined in the table. If the key got duplicated, the program will give us a compile time error. So let's add one more record value that contains a duplicate ID field. So I will add a record value that contains ID value as 2 and name as Ginny. So you can see that in here there are two records that contains ID value as 2. So the program will give us a compile time error that's saying duplicate key found in the table row, ID value is 2. We can use a combination of 2 or more fields as the key also. In that case, all those fields should be defined as read-only in the constraint. Remember that we do not need to define constraint type separately every time. Instead of that, we can replace employee type with the constraint type directly like this. It will depend on the situation. If we want this constraint record type for several occurrences, it is better to define it separately and use it like we did in the previous examples. But whatever method you use, remember to make the key field as read-only. Now we are going to define a table type that has multiple keys spread over separate fields. So let's define the constraint type for the table. I will use a student course registration example that contains student ID and course ID as the fields in the constraint. So type a record type. I will name this record as course registration. So inside the record, read-only string course ID and read-only string student ID. Our target is to use the combination of student ID and the course ID fields as the key of the table. So because of that, I define these course ID and student ID field as read-only. So we can use the combination of them as the key of our table. Let's define our new table. It is very similar to the previous one. So type table and add course registration as the constraint, and then add course ID and student ID as the key fields. This means we use combination of course ID and student ID fields as the key. And add a variable name. I will go with CR table. And the rest is same as the table we discussed in previously. So I will add two suitable record as the value for this table. Ballerina supports defining tables with a type parameter as the key type. In this case, we provide the type of the key in left hand side and define the key field of the constraint in right hand side. So type table, then the table constraint employee. After that type key, then we have to provide the type constraint for the key. So in this case, I will go with string. Then the variable name for the table, equal sign, then keyword table. Then I will define the key field for the table in right hand side. The key field should be compatible with the constraint in the left hand side. So in here, we can only use string fields in our employee record. For this example, I will go with email field. Remember that I can use the national ID field as well because it is also compatible with the string key constraint. But I cannot use employee ID field because it is type of int. So the rest is same as the samples we discussed in earlier. The advantage of defining tables with key constraint is we can just change the value of mTable variable by adding a new key field that is compatible with the key constraint without initializing the variable again. So we can change the value of the variable to a table with national ID as the key field. But if we try to change the key field to employee ID, this will give a compile time error because employee ID is a type of int. It is not compatible with string key constraint. So now we are going to discuss about the keyless tables in Ballerina. In the keyless tables, we can define a table type without providing the key field or the key constraint. So type table, then the table constraint and the variable name for the table. In the right hand side, type table and then the values for the table. So you can see that we didn't provide any key field or a constraint for the table in here. So we can change our variable value to a new table that contains key field as well. So for this, I will assign this mTable variable to a table that have employee ID as the key field. So remember that we can use any read-only attribute in the table constraint as the key in here. So if I want, I can update the key field to email like this. Now we are going to discuss about structured keys in Ballerina tables. Key fields can be structured types as long as they belong to any subtype of plain data. The value of the key field must be immutable. So in this example, the key field for the table is name field, which is a record that contains first name and last name as the fields.